We know that in this time of crisis, those who are in mourning are facing especially difficult circumstances. So joining me now from Carefor Hospice is Shannon Ball. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so as I just alluded to, we know that those who are in mourning are really facing it difficult right now. So why don't we talk a little bit about that and how hard this time can be on them?
With the COVID situation, everybody is more isolated than they would normally be, but it's especially impacting people who have gone through a recent loss. Grieving is usually an isolated experience, but it's really being heavily impacted by the amount of support people are able to get, along with the rituals that people are losing out on, such as just the opportunity of saying goodbye. Some people aren't getting that opportunity, unfortunately, along with rituals like funerals and celebrations of life are having to be postponed. So it's really impacting the grieving process.
Absolutely. And when you talk about rituals, you were able to actually earlier this week you shared a great resource in terms of some tips for people that are mourning right now. And top of the list was maintaining some form of ritual.
Yeah, so I think it's important for people to acknowledge that even though you might not be able to go through with the formal rituals right now, that when this is finally over, you will be able to have that opportunity. And to just take advantage of rituals that you can do in a safe environment at home. It's really important to express those emotions. So even writing a letter to your deceased loved one of what you didn't get a chance to say, lighting candles, planting a memorial tree is pretty popular now too. So just finding creative ways to bring in those rituals for yourselves and your loved ones.
All right, and number two on your list, of course, was support. Again, that's changed the way that we can reach out for support, but talk to me about the importance of that.
Yeah, so I think it kind of falls on both people, the person who has lost their loved one and their support network as well. It's important to reach out to those that you know are in a vulnerable position, check in with people regularly, and for the grieving individual, kind of make a schedule of who you can contact and know what kind of support you can get from each person in your life. If you can reach out to a professional for support, that would be helpful too. Virtual bereavement support groups are available here at hospice, and I'm also doing one-on-one support sessions through Zoom as well.
All right, and we'll speak a little bit more about those groups towards the end of the interview. And of course, we know that during this time, mourning is a big part of people's lives, but it's not the only part. So let's talk about other stresses and how that can be managed when someone is also in mourning.
Yeah, so it's needed to give yourself permission to not just focus solely on the grief, but as we know, there's a lot of stressors going on for a lot of people right now. Taking care of your own family and yourself, health-wise, financial stress, even with jobs, there's a lot of job uncertainty right now. So giving yourself permission to focus on your grief when you're able to, but also to put it aside when needed and focus on other things as well.
And that segues very well into number four, which is self-care.
Yeah, that's very important. We're almost having to force ourselves to pay extra attention to this right now, as being isolated really impacts mental health. And when you're grieving, that's even more on top of that. So self-care is definitely needed. Spend time doing things that bring you joy, cooking, meditating, anything that brings you comfort. You should find time during the day to focus on that.
And you just alluded to number five as well, which was mental health. We know again that the stress and the strain of everything going on right now impacts mental health. So those that are also grieving should be extra mindful of their state of mind.
Yeah, definitely to monitor your mental health and your well-being each day. If you're finding it's too hard to cope with on your own, definitely reach out to your physician, reach out to a social worker. Like I said, there's lots of virtual support groups and virtual support out there right now. So reach out.
All right, so let's just talk a little bit about those in a little bit more detail. Obviously, hospice has had to adapt their services. So you mentioned that email, phone, even you've conducted some meetings on Zoom. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, it took us a bit of time to adjust to all of the restrictions that we're having to face, but we're we're making good progress with having our services available virtually. I think that's especially important for bereavement right now. So we are doing Zoom support groups, and we're in the process of starting a separate group for people who have lost someone during the time of COVID, because I think that really is a unique kind of grief that we're facing with that.
Absolutely, and maybe we could just finish off and elaborate a little bit more on that, because we know that maybe losing someone to COVID is a unique circumstance, but as well we know that people aren't necessarily able to visit their loved ones in hospital or long-term care and really have those final words and that goodbye. So maybe just a brief note on that.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it such a unique situation, is that um, otherwise we would have had this opportunity to say goodbye to our loved ones, to go ahead and plan out funerals and have those formal rituals. But right now, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't getting to do that. So it really does impact the grief that you're going through, and it's important to kind of receive support to validate all of those emotions that people go through.
Absolutely, and as we've alluded to, the services are always there, so it's so important to reach out. So we'll just finish off with how people can get in touch if they do want to reach out for services.
Yeah, if anyone wants to participate in an online support group through hospice, just call the hospice, or you can send me an email. Ask for Shannon. I deal with all of the bereavement groups, so I'd be happy to give people more information.
Excellent. Well, Shannon, on that note, thank you so much for joining me and talking about this very important topic, and hopefully some of our viewers that are going through a hard time found some help.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.